I am going to start with a simple truth, because conversational AI today is actually not that great. I think anyone that actually goes into any of the bots on any different industry would have a really low expectation when the conversation starts. They're expecting it to not be great. And that's not because we don't have good teams and good people. We're surrounded by everyone today. It's not because the technology isn't ready. I think the technology is actually begging for us to go quicker rather than catching up with them. I think it's because we're designing in channels rather than broader experiences, and not really thinking about the customer or the end user in an end-to-end experience rather than an individual interaction within a channel. The question no longer is, can we build a bot? I think there's, again, many of us that have proven that yes, you absolutely can, but can we actually build an experience that earns trust from a customer, that reduces friction and actually genuinely transforms how people interact with us? I would just want to share today how we have learned building our AI-powered virtual assistant Redi, and how we then scaled that across the enterprise and have been able to do wonderful things for our customers. Organisations today that are getting it right don't just automate conversations, they're actually redefining them. And we are often asked, like, how did you get started? What did you do? What was the strategy? Where was the blueprint? In all honesty, we just didn't have one. We just started. We had a problem that we had to solve within our credit card space, and we kicked off and started to look into that. I think momentum itself comes from action rather than the gift of something written down, giving you permission to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to explain a little bit about our journey. So as I said, we had a problem. Credit Card Redi was born from the fact that we had a digital app only for customers to interact. It was a digital process for our customers. They couldn't go into branch, and we just wanted to try and solve that problem in a different way. So rather than putting more money into building out our mobile app only, we took a small pot of money and took that problem into a different channel. And from there, we wanted to look into live chat, so understanding how customers can use chat today in the bot. So really interesting that within about 8 weeks, we were able to stand up a click to chat to a human, just to see what kind of different interactions would come via that channel in comparison to maybe over the phone or how they use their mobile apps today. And we just gathered the data. We had a small team that we pulled from different areas of the business, so it was actually SMEs from the business rather than people with expertise in conversational AI or analysis at that time. And being able to take the small team, understand the data and how customers use that channel was really how things grew and were born, an element of momentum. Early on, we had just very, very basic FAQ bot in place, conversational by nature, but just very limited topics to understand how customers wanted to use AI and how they wanted to interact in that space. We actually did quite a lot of sit-downs with customers and with different colleagues as well to see, how do you use AI today? What does it look like outside of financial services? What are you using it for in your personal life? And then how would you use AI in banking? It was actually really interesting at that time, so kind of early 23, if I'm honest, that customers didn't really want AI in financial services. They weren't overly interested. They told us they didn't trust it, and anything that we did tell them in a bot, they would want checked, or they'd want clarified, or a backup email sent, or they might just phone and check that it was actually correct. They said they only wanted really simple matters, nothing complex. And at that time, they weren't really using AI in their own personal space. It was just very early days. I think we heard yesterday around some of the timeline for some of the AI kicking off. So it was really, really interesting to understand what customers wanted, and I think just being respectful to them at that time, we were able to just keep it very simple from an FAQ perspective and build out slowly over time as things developed. So we launched the FAQ bot, again, just understanding and watching how that developed and worked. We started in the background, looking into some API connectivity, making sure that we were starting to get a little bit smarter in the technology in the background. And we built out, really just trying to understand what that roadmap might look like for the future, knowing that the customer's appetite was maybe not quite where we thought it was going to be at the beginning. we did get Redi smarter. We launched an upgraded version. It had some proactive messaging just to let them know that we could do things with their card details, just a bit of a welcome message from them. We had just was able to act on behalf of a customer in very few circumstances to just build their trust and work with them in that space as well. So a really interesting 2023 working with our customers, learning ourselves and growing as a team, and just understanding how AI was adapting in the industry and what we could do more in that space. We were in that siloed pocket of the business. There was no one really overly interested or watching what we were doing in the bank. It was seen very much as like a small team that were away doing something else behind closed doors, and we just didn't have buy-in from many other areas or the kind of C-suite at that time. However, because of the foundation layer that we had put in place and the fact that we did have some API connectivity, there was proactive messaging that sat in that space. We actually went on to win an award for the best use of AI in financial services in early 2024, and what a difference that made to our reputation, both in the bank and external. It was a blessing and a curse, if I'm honest. We had ran for nearly a year, kind of under the radar, with no one really asking questions. And almost overnight, we ended up with emails from the CEO asking, "What else are you doing? What does this look like? How is it? What are the customers saying in that space?" So really, really interesting. They kept asking, "What's next? What does that roadmap now look like?" And there was a lot more interest in what was coming down the line. And I think one of the key takeaways for me at this point was we did not go faster. We took a bit of a pause to set out our stall to understand what are the principles, the guardrails that we wanted to work towards as a team. What are the just really the principles that we wanted to hold ourselves to within the bank, and just making sure that we understood what is our vision and why are we doing this. Making sure that we were trying to be a bit proactive. There was system connectivity, and we wouldn't ask customers that any question that we actually already knew the answer to in the background. Just making sure that we were building confidence with the customer. We were keeping it conversational by nature. There was no loops. If customers needed to speak to someone, or we felt it was the right decision to pass them to someone at that time, that we did that. And that Redi had its own persona, it was part of the team, and just really making sure that we all kind of bought into what Redi was and how it was going to perform in the future is probably one of the key things that gave us that foundation layer to build across the rest of the team and in the bank. So in terms of what we've achieved, we had legacy bots at that point, kind of keyword matching bots that were in place. So we just tried some new things. We added in some deep links. There was contextual entry from different maybe browsers versus mobile apps, and it actually really helped us start looking at technical debt as well. So we were a really small team, and we still are. There's less than 30 of us that do the work in this space, and just a bit of trial and error, understanding how customers are using it today, and working with customers. Again, we went back to just understand how do they use it now. We were kind of mid-24 at that point. What's changed in their lives? What's changed with the technology? We had new, as Cara said earlier, we're in the Microsoft suite just now, and their technology was advancing as well. So we had loads of opportunity to really try and use the platform for many different things. I think the technical debt and being able to remove many different things that we had to own and update and govern at the time was really a sensible approach for us. It reduced the number of kind of tracks that we had under play at one time, and we were able to shift the customer behaviour from that kind of keyword matching into more conversational tones, which we saw in our retail Redi, which progressed. We saw customers contain much higher, I think it went up by about 25% from the keyword matching into that more conversational bot, just by adding in some of the deep links and different elements that they could do, just having it a little bit smarter. I think one of the lessons from what we've done as well is our business banking Redi. So Andrew here today that did a lot of the work in that space. We did not have a bot in place. Business banking is really complex. There's really complex customer types, really complex queries that come through, and they had live chat already. So Moving them onto the Microsoft tech stack to get them all in the same place was a great first step, and just understanding what is the very simple basic things that business banking customers are trying to do that are escalating into that live agent space, and we built that into, again, basic FAQ bot. So this one is not very smart, it's not connected into the back end, it doesn't act on behalf of the customer, it is a very simple space for those business customers. But we still saw a reduction in 33% of escalations to live agents just being contained now in that simple bot because of the FAQ nature, the conversational nature around the simple things that business customers can do in that space. So it doesn't always have to be an all singing, all dancing bot as well, I think, and that's really important to just make sure that you're using what customers are looking for at that time and what you can actually do for them, rather than us overcomplicating and doing a lot of back-end work. We launched quicker and actually got a reduction into that live chat space as well. One thing I want to touch on in terms of knowledge in this space as well, so we tried twice and failed throughout 2024 to get a generative AI customer facing bot in place. The risk appetite from the bank wasn't there. The technology, if I'm honest, wasn't quite at where it should be for us to put it in front of customers and have faith in that space as well. We saw hallucinations early on, so just making the call to stop looking at that and to pivot was really important for me. And that's just, there's plenty of problems, just pick another one, pivot into something else and change there. So we have, by doing that, we were able to move, rather than a customer-facing bot from a generative AI space, we have that internally with our colleagues. And Louisa was able to do that at the end of last year and deploy that into the colleague space to give them simple conversational answers to help them deal with customer-facing queries, which is the first of its kind within our bank, and is really now being able to provide us with the data and stories that we need to share internally with the risk appetite and increase that over time to hopefully have something customer-facing at some point this year. So definitely consider pivoting in different places just based on what's happening in the industry. There was a lot of news or maybe negative news stories around 2024 and what was happening in that conversational space, and it just wasn't worth it for us to continue to chap on a door that wasn't going to open. So pivot and move into something else as needed. I want to talk about customer behaviour. Customer behaviour is changing, so it's really, really interesting for us to have watched over the last couple of years. I think if we kick off any transformational project or programme of work, you would spend a lot of time talking about how you want to reduce contacts, maybe get right first time and no repeat callers. What we found with Redi and in that conversational space was contacts increased. They were more and more and more. And I find that really interesting. Self-service, as we know it, is no longer there. Like customers don't want to use the burger menus and scroll through different menu options or large FAQ pages or scanning for contact numbers. They really want to have an AI companion that takes them on the journey and kind of holds their hand like an intelligent partner to take that with them and work that through with them. So I think it's really, really interesting to see just how customers, they don't want to do it themselves. They want an intelligent support system in place to do so. I'm just going to touch on the chart as well. So this was the baby. This was Credit Card Redi that had won the award. It was the second highest customer satisfaction score in the bank. We had went away and spent 2024 looking at the other bots and designing and developing in different places. And I think one of the lessons in this space is that when we went back to look at that bot, we added in some of the learnings, we added in some of the deep links, we upgraded the technology that it sat on, and it then shot to the top of bank for customer satisfaction. So even though it was a really high performing space, the one thing that I would ask everyone to remember is when you launch the bot, that's the work beginning, not ending. You have to then continue to enhance and work that through, and Chris did a lot of the work to actually get that to the top space in the bank, which I think is just really a real good learning that your work is never done in that work, in that space. Just before I wrap, I want to talk about the team. So we learned and grew as customers did with AI, so did we. I think we built our own foundation layer, while we were building that technical layer, and we developed and grew together, creating a team and a vision for what we wanted to do within conversational banking. We spoke about what do our objectives need to look like, what are our key results. We did a lot of experimentation. We were really curious and used data, and I think that helped us just learn, grow, and build trust and be curious in what was coming in that technology space. One thing that we want to touch on is that our team delivered on average every 4 working days throughout 2025, and I still challenge anyone else that can say that they play in the space close to that. And the reason that we're able to do that is people like Gordon and the team, because we broke out of our roles and responsibilities. We did not sit and stay in one space as the role was defined in a traditional transformation programme. Gordon, as an example, speaks to customers, speaks to stakeholders. He could design some of the journeys that sit in Redi. He can write up how those designs need to work with the stakeholders. He can build them because it's in that low-code space. He can do a kind of 4-eye check with our testing team as well to make sure that they can do test as efficiently as possible, and also then define any training material or briefing input that's needed for the contact centre or our end users as well. So the fact that we have people in the team that can really run the end-to-end life cycle, and that's not just one person, that's different people in the team have all broken out of what they do and in their silos today. I just think that it gave us so many different levers and options that allowed us to move at scale and at pace across the last couple of years. So takeaways for me is really just to organisations that are leading in this conversational AI space aren't the ones with the biggest budgets, aren't the ones with the most money to spend, they don't have the most advanced models. It really is about designing with purpose, building with discipline and guardrails in mind, and making sure that you never really lose sight of the human at the end of the interaction. Conversational banking is not a technical project, it is a long-lived space, and it really is how we are going to communicate and service and build trust at scale with our customers. So I think when you go back to your own businesses and roadmaps and stakeholders, it's not really about what can you automate today within a process, but what experience is it that you want to create for your customers. And I think just reframing the question can actually change everything in that space. So thank you.